Hey guys, this is Miss McGuire at Utley Middle School, and today we're going to be learning about Greek theater. This is actually one of my all-time favorite time periods that we get to cover during our theater history unit, so super excited to be able to share this with you guys today. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so here we go. We're actually going to start with a video that I absolutely love because I feel like it really captures just the heart of what Greek theater is and really goes in depth about their performance spaces, which we will talk about here in a bit after the video. But know that this video does go a little bit more in depth than what we're going to talk about in our notes, but nonetheless, I hope you enjoy it.
To honor their gods, the ancient Greeks created wonders that forced them to make extraordinary technological discoveries. One such breakthrough was a theater built to honor the god Dionysius. It was the greatest theater in the Western world, with the most advanced acoustic design. Hidden in the hills at Epidaurus, about 100 miles from Athens, the 14,000-seat theater has dazzled audiences for 2,500 years. It is a feat of engineering. 55 rows of stone seats built into the hillside, with such precision that the theater has perfect acoustics. Surprisingly, the reason for siting the theater in this remote place has its origin in medicine. Next to the theater was a vast healing center, and to the ancient Greeks, theater was medicine.
One way of trying to understand the link between the healing cult and this particularly exquisite theatre is that for the ancient Greeks, music, and Greek theatre is a fundamentally musical experience, was actually used in medical therapy. The great philosopher Aristotle actually writes about how people who are distressed and psychologically disturbed can come to a great resolution of that and to a much happier state of mind by listening to certain kinds of music and watching certain kinds of performance.
At the adjacent healing center, the god of medicine, Asclepios, and his magical snakes were said to work miracles. Medical cures and remedies were inscribed on stone tablets. Shrines were built to the cult of Asclepios, and the center developed into a wealthy healing sanctuary. People came from across the empire to cure every ailment and disability. In 360 BC, the money collected from patients was used to build a vast theater. The architect, Polykleitos, had already built a roundhouse at the sanctuary, but now set about a far grander circular design. He chose a bowl-shaped site facing west so the rising sun would light up the landscape behind the stage. He dug out the round performance space before creating the huge seating area known as the gazing space. Thousands of limestone blocks cut from local quarries formed the seats. His design was for 32 rows, although 23 more were added 2 centuries later. Behind the actors was the scaena, the origin of the word scene, a 2-story stage building which was painted as a backdrop for the play. The scaena also enabled early special effects. When a play required a god to descend from the heavens, an actor was flown in on a hoist. The masked performers often played to audiences of up to 14,000 without the benefit of microphones. Polykleitos was able to create perfect acoustics. Even a coin being dropped at the center of the performance circle can be heard clearly in the back rows. The design of the theater also enhances the sound of the human voice. The secret lies in how sounds are reflected by the stone itself.
A sound is produced by somebody's mouth. It will hit a wall, that's a reflection. And what they've done in Epidaurus, in order to create a large quantity of short reflections, is that they've broken up the surface. There is no surface which is flat. So when a sound hits a wall, it's diffused in many, many directions. It enhances the original sound by kind of stretching it a little bit longer than it already is.
And in the quest for perfection, the Greeks developed another technique to make the sound even clearer.
When somebody speaks in a theatre, you can hear resonances, and if you have an ear for it, you know which resonances are going to get in the way of the dialogue. So if you were to find something that can take those resonances out, then you're laughing. And that's exactly what they tried to do. They used a resonator, which they would tune to the frequencies that they wanted to take out and to the reflections they wanted to take out. And they would embed them in the wall.
2,500 years later, the theatre is still entrancing audiences. The place that has inspired for millennia remains one of the world's finest theatres.
Okay, so just to kind of talk about that video just a little bit, and then we're going to get started with our notes. I think my biggest takeaway from watching that video is just how amazing that without the technology that we have today, that the Greeks were able to engineer and design their theaters in such a way that basically no matter where you were sitting, you could be at the very top in the nosebleeds, or you could be all the way down in the front. You were able to hear what was going on stage, even though these amphitheaters were humongous. I mean, they say in the video 14,000 people. So to me, I don't know. Every time I watch this, I can see it a million times, and that's still just like, I just can't get over it. So we're going to dive into our notes now. So let's talk about the origins of theater. So our word theater today actually comes from the Greeks, and it comes from their word theatron, which literally means a place for viewing. So think about what theater is. You're walking into a theater and you are experiencing and watching some sort of performance. So from the word theatron, we now have our current word theater. Originally, Greek theater it began as religious festivals to honor the gods. I'm sure at some point you've either learned or you will learn all about all the different Greek gods. And so during this time, they would hold festivals to honor the gods. There's actually a god of theater, believe it or not. These amphitheaters could hold a lot of people, so up to 20,000. I know in the video it said 14,000, but that was talking about a very specific theater. But in general, these amphitheaters could hold a lot of people. So this was kind of the thing that you did. You went and saw shows, and the way that they were able to afford to build these amphitheaters is through public funds, otherwise known as taxes. So the tax dollars would go to building theaters. So they touched on this in the video and talked about, you could drop a coin in the middle, and no matter where you were, you could hear it. Actually true. These theaters were designed with absolutely perfect acoustics, meaning that no matter where you were sitting, you could hear. So as an actor, yes, it was important that you still projected, which we will learn what that means later on. Basically, a little freebie for you now is to project means that you're not screaming, but you are pushing your voice using your diaphragm so that you are getting your volume across whatever space you might be performing in. So for them, performing in such a large space meant really got to push that voice. But with them having perfect acoustics, it wasn't as big of a challenge. The amphitheaters were carved out of the sides of hills, so completely outdoors, open to all of the elements that come along with that. It being really hot, it could potentially rain. When the sun started going down, they obviously did not have stage lights at this time. So use your imagination, but still very cool performance space. And these theaters are still standing, sitting, whatever you want to call, in the side of a hill, however you want to phrase that, but still there today. They are a little bit more run down than they were all these years ago, but still pretty amazing if you get the ability or the privilege to see these one day. So let's talk about Thespis and the chorus. So I'm going to start with the chorus first, because that's going to lead us into who Thespis was here in just a second. So in Greek theater, it was standard that you would have 3 actors who would play all of your main characters. Okay, so in today's theater, you can have, however many people on stage that you want. But in Greek theater, you had 3 actors who would play all of the main characters, and they would give advice, they would give opinions, ask questions, and And then you would always have what was known as your ideal spectator. And the ideal spectator, so if you think about what the word spectator is, a spectator is somebody who watches, and ideal means the best. So the ideal spectator was like your perfect audience member, if you will. So what the ideal spectator's job is to react how they thought the audience should react. So if it was a Greek tragedy and it was sad, then obviously they wanted, a sad reaction from the audience. If it was a comedy, laughing, so on and so forth, you get the gist. So from our chorus, we actually get somebody whose name is Thespis. And Thespis was a guy who I guess decided he was tired of being in the chorus. And so he decided to step out from the chorus, and he created the very first dialogue. And in doing that, he became the first actor. So Thespis is where we actually get our current term thespian, and a thespian is an actor. All of you are thespians. So some conventions about Greek theater. Sorry girls, but it was only men, and it stays this way for longer than it should have, but nonetheless, only men. They wore masks, as you can see in this picture here, and also in the video they showed. They would play multiple roles. So as you can imagine, if you've just got 3 people who are playing all the roles, very few plays only have 3 characters. So they would play multiple roles. They chanted their dialogue. So a chant, think of that as kind of an in-between between singing and talking. And they used stylized choreography, not necessarily dance. Nobody was tap dancing out in the middle of the amphitheater, but rather it was more stylized movement that they would do on the stage, and we called that stylized choreography. And then lastly, they displayed their emotion vocally. And if you think about it, if you're wearing a mask, and let's say you did not have time to go to the skene, which was the area where they would go switch out their masks, change the scenes. Let's say you've got to display a different emotion and you don't have time to go switch out a mask. Well, if your face is permanently locked in a frown and you need to be happy, you would have to portray that vocally because your face was locked. So really played with the vocals with these actors, and very, very different from the way we do theater now, but still very cool.